can run from there. So I'll try. So unless it becomes absolutely impossible for me to do it from there, maybe for the last 1 month,
It
but
says,
I'll do my best to do it from there.
ma'am, it's a sincere request, ma'am. Please continue.
I don't know. I'll
Yes, ma'am.
try
Please
because
continue,
I do
ma'am.
not know what kind of time requirement I'll have, but I still think because I know with the deanship also I was teaching. So I don't think that should be a very major issue, but I do not know for sure. So at this point I cannot commit, but I know I would want to continue and finish both my courses. But all dependent on what kind of, because it's a new place. I've not been there at all. I've been sort of there, visited as a faculty for the trainings and all, but I do not know what kind of time they will demand. But I assume that it will be possible to. One of my colleagues from another university said that no, it should be possible for you to continue. The university would not have a problem either way, but I would want to complete the course. And the other option is that in the next 4 weeks or three weeks, actually, this week included 4 weeks, we do some extra classes and finish the course. If you're willing to take classes in the morning,
That would be great, ma'am.
that's another
Yes, ma'am. That
possibility.
would be better.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
we can, because we kind of jam it up. I'll speak with the PIC and see what you suggest. Because this year we do not know to what extent attendance will be an issue. But I'm quite sure even if I do the course before I go, they will still give you a teacher for students who may not have been able to attend earlier, who would still have some queries. So there may still be some arrangement for you to either join somebody or something. But I'm sure that we'll find out the best solution. So, okay, back to section 300, fourthly today.
You like share your email so we can pester you sometimes after you're gone.
Okay, I will. I have to kind of go there and see what the things are like. And I'm quite sure that if you will keep track of NLUO website, whatever is happening there should be there on the website. I've kind of checked their website. Some pages are functional, some pages are not. So we'll try to do whatever we can do best. But surely there's competitions and all. I will surely let you know.
Thank you.
So are we ready for the class?
Yes.
So we've got two cases, Dhirajya and Gyarsibai.
Yes,
Who is going to tell us the brief facts in Dhirajya?
Me.
Only Nirupam
And,
is talking. Why others are not speaking? There are only, I can tell you who are the people who are talking. Nirupam, Jitendra sometime, usually occasionally. Then we got Tushar and we have Yugal. What is the rest of the class doing?
Ma'am, may I present the case?
Oh, perfect. We got a new first. Abhishek is also. So Abhishek will present the second. Abhishek, have you read the second case?
Not ma'am. Actually, I was not there in the class, so I could manage the read the case of the Rajyawala only.
Divakar, have you read Gyarsibai?
Yes, ma'am.
So you will present Gyarsibai and Abhishek will present Dhirajya, okay?
Dhirajya.
Okay,
Is that all right, Divakar? Okay, so let's
Yes, ma'am.
start with Abhishek. Yeah, okay, so Abhishek, tell us what are the defects?
Ma'am, Dhirajya was a woman. She got married to a man, Jhagga. The name of the man is Jhagga. And
Okay, no. Divakar, Abhishek, we've been, all this while, we've been emphasizing that you can omit the irrelevant part. If his name was Jhagga and what was Bhupati, it doesn't matter. So there was a married woman.
there was a married woman, ma'am, and there was, there was some domestic abuse was going on her. So that is why, the fight ensued between her and her husband, and she was moved to take a very brave step. And while she was trying to escape from her husband, so she was running away, and while she was running away, she fell into a well. Now the case was that whether she intended to commit suicide or whether it was, the way she fell into it, the way she fell into well. I mean, it was unwillingly. I mean, she didn't want to commit suicide. While she fell into well, during that happenstance, the kid died, and she was framed with she was framed under article under section 300. Yes, ma'am, under section 300 for murder.
Nobody, no. You need to be sure that when charges are framed under the punishing section, not the defining section. So 300 is a defining section. This defines what is murder. Punishment for this offense is 302. So she was charged under 302. Abhishek, the voice is, you need to mute. Abhishek, mute. So you have to be careful about it, that when a charge is framed, it is framed under the section which provides punishment. So nobody would ever be charged with section 300. They will be charged with section 302 or 304. So charges is not under 299 and 300. 299 and 300 are defining section. They give definitions of these two offenses. Punishment is prescribed in somewhere else. You will find in the scheme of the legislation that sometimes the same action which defines the offense also provides the punishment. Sometimes they have this, that 299 and 300, where independent sections are there to define the offense, and then there are separate sections providing the sentence. So the last sentence that you said, that she was charged under 300, it's not 300, 302. And the second section she was charged was 309, attempt to commit suicide. So when you look at these facts, think of this, no? This is a woman with a 6-month-old baby who is wanting to visit her natal family. The husband is objecting to that. And when she sneaks out, she's not permitted to. So somewhere the control of the husband, that she has to sneak out of her marital home. And then when she finds that her husband is following her, she's so fearful that there's a difference whether the two versions, whether at that point of time she fell into the well or she jumped into the well. But with the baby, she jumped into the well is the first version. And later on, I think at the defense counsel behest, she said, no, I fell into the well because she didn't want to be prosecuted for this. So look at the state of mind of this woman. What kind of married life she was having, that she gets so scared of the husband that she prefers to jump into the well. What kind of violence she must have been finding for her to get, in this case, does recognize that she got into a state of panic. So what kind of husband was this who can create such a panic in the mind of the wife that she jumps into the well with a baby? That's something I wanted to draw your attention. Which year is this case decided?
1940, ma'am. Allahabad High Court.
So 1940. So the problem of domestic violence is not today. And the judges do mention that he may have been beating her, as is the case usually. So there's a recognition of domestic violence even in 1940, but whether that constitutes an excuse that there was a domestic violence. So we'll come back to this idea, but certainly the facts are well understood. So what is the issue in this case?
Ma'am, issue was that whether she committed the offense of suicide, or whether she willingly or intentionally jumped into well to commit suicide, and while she was doing that, she killed her baby, and she survived though.
Yeah, so the baby died, she survived. So the charge is she guilty of murder of her child?
Yes, ma'am.
So this will be the answer will be given by reference to which clause of section 300?
Ma'am, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat the question, please?
And the question is open to everybody to answer, not only to Abhishek, because Abhishek is not the only one responsible. Everybody else has to respond to this question I'm asking. So when the charge is under 302, we need to relate to one of the 4 clauses of 300. So which clause is attracted on these facts?
Fourth clause.
Immediately
dangerous act.
Why it is not first 3?
Because there was
because the intention was not there
to kill the child at all.
There's no intention, perfect. There's no intention to cause the death. there's no intention to cause injury as is likely to cause death. Secondly, certainly not attracted at all. So the fourth one is whether jumping into the well is an imminently dangerous act with a baby in your arm.
It is.
Yes, ma'am.
And the answer
Yes,
is
ma'am.
yes. So the first requirement of fourth is satisfied. She undertook an imminently dangerous act, which she knows. Can we say that she should have known that
Yes,
this
ma'am.
was likely to cause death, or it was likely to cause such injuries as are likely to cause death? So answer is yes again. Then the third requirement and fourth is does so without an excuse. So whether we can say that there was an excuse because
Yes,
of
ma'am.
which murder.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the excuse, Deepika?
Yes, ma'am. She was afraid from husband when she turned. She saw her husband behind her, so that's why she fell into the well.
So judge's reasoning is that she did not. We are not saying fear from her husband is the reason, but whether fear from her husband is sufficient to create an excuse under this section.
Ma'am,
Because the whole. But no, I'm saying that when you compare the reasoning of Garcibai and Dhirajia, we have to understand what are the circumstances which the judges say, oh, this will constitute excuse. What are the circumstances they will not constitute a thing, but the facts are similar. In the second case also, Garcibai also, she leaves home with 3 children, jumps into the well, children die, she survives. The same question, whether she is guilty of murder of her children. We'll come back to the attempt to commit suicide aspect also. But let's presently focus on this aspect of whether these 2 women can be held liable. So in this case, the judges said she had not become insane. The importance of that statement is that if she can be classified that murder, she lost her balance of her mind at that point of time, and she did not know the nature of the act. She did not know it was right or wrong. She did not know it was illegal. So she was just in that state. So that is called the legal insanity scenario. And insanity is not that it has to be permanent. It can happen on a spur also. It can happen for a short time also. So at that point of time. So that is no. We are not saying she became insane, but her state of mind was a panic of that kind which constitute an excuse in this case. So therefore, what is the conviction she will be liable for?
299(3).
So remember, it is not that because she was in a state of panic and the judges said it was an excuse, therefore she's not liable for any criminal offense. She's still liable for culpable homicide. So even though the act was imminently dangerous, even though she must have had knowledge that it was likely to cause death, the judges said because the state of panic, the state of mind of being in a panic constitute. We'll come back to the Garcibai in a minute. So then, the state of panic constituted an excuse. Therefore, it goes back to culpable homicide. Because remember, again, we have these 3 steps. First, whether it amounts to culpable homicide. So culpable homicide, thirdly, would have said an act which is likely to cause death, certainly. Then we examine the third stage where say whether it fulfill the conditions of fourthly. So 2 conditions fulfilled, third not fulfilled. But because the conditions of culpable homicide per se and 299 are already satisfied, therefore it reverts back to, so it kind of remains there only. We say it's only 299 which is liable for culpable homicide. What is the punishment the judges have given for this offense?
6 months.
6 months punishment.
So remember,
6 months ignis punishment.
because in the other class, the question was being raised, what punishment, why 5 years? Look, this is a punishment. In case of knowledge, the punishment was up to 10 years. So on the facts of the case, the judges said we have to convict, but 6 months is enough. This will suffice the justice. And that is where the judges look at the facts and circumstances to determine what will be the appropriate sentence for this particular scenario.
Ma'am, what is the difference? What is the difference between rigorous imprisonment and simple imprisonment?
आपने वो सुना एक्सप्रेशन, जेल में जाकर चक्की पीसोगे?
Yes, ma'am.
So चक्की पीसना is the hard labor part of it. दीवारें तोड़ते हैं prisoners, they do the hard manual labor. That's called that you are obligated to do some labor in the prison. So there are a range of activities the prisoners do as a
and-
part of sentence. When it says rigorous, then they have to. If it's a simple imprisonment, they may still do some work in the prison to keep themselves occupied, but they're not obligated to do that.
तुम उस काम के कुछ पैसे मिलते हैं मतलब मिनिमम वेज कुछ
What's a chakki? Grinding stone, where now you make wheat out of wheat. You make atta. You make flour out of wheat. So that's the chakki.
हेलो मैम मैम
So it's a Hindi phrase. Yes.
मैम रिग्रेस इम्प्रिजनमेंट में मिनिमम वेज मिलता है कुछ प्रिजनर्स को
I'm quite sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I think मिलता है because wage जो minimum wage नहीं है वहाँ पे prison के अपने wage rates हैं. So they are not, and there was some litigation. I'm not very sure what is the outcome of that case where there is a table that for what work, how much remuneration is given. And that remuneration was not at par with the minimum wages. So there was a challenge. I didn't follow that up to find out whether the case has been disposed of yet or not. We're saying that you cannot give even in the prison scenario less than the mandatory minimum. But certainly certainly that is 100% the scenario will be that scenario when it is the labor, when they are doing it voluntarily and they are helping the administration. So you'll have to look at the prison rules. We have Delhi prisons rules, I think 2012. No, earlier was 1912. Then they were Punjab prison rules. So you will have to check them to find out what are the wages presently being given to them. But yes, they are given wages, and part of it they can spend on themselves in the prison, part of it they can send back to their families. So let's come back to the case we are talking about. There were certain chats. Let me check out what are students saying in the chats. Okay, manual chakki. So there's a discussion on chakki going on. But you know what I find it very interesting that this is said to be a punishment, chakki pisna, no? To grind the grinding stones. Women in the homes have been doing it for ages. That is never recognized as hard labor. But when men do it in prison, this is seen as hard labor. So again, double standards that women without any punishment have been doing. But today, of course, women don't do that anymore. But when there were no floor mills and women used to be responsible for cooking in their private sphere, every single woman was doing the chakki piso. They were all grinding the stone to provide food to the family. And that was seen as their part of their work. It was not seen as hard labor as part of the imprisonment. So certainly, if men do some things, then it becomes very hard labor for them. But for women, it was normal activity of the day. So let's come back to Dhirajya. So Dhirajya, we found acknowledgement of the fact that domestic violence is prevalent. Can you read out paras where the judges say, as happens usually, the husband was used to beat her? We haven't done that now. You can again after the class go back and read both the cases, compare how the judges have normalized. Fourth is without any excuse, and if she fell into the well, she avoid greater evil. Means if she died, then she avoid ill treatment of husband. Is it correct reason? Escape from ill treatment. Raviraj is asking all these questions. And we'll have all this discussion after we have briefly looked at Gyacheva, because we want to compare and contrast and then understand. One of the propositions we have is that criminal law has got men as the primary target in creating offenses, in defining offenses, even the offenses which are specially made to protect women. So we are beginning that discussion from now, and you will have this reading, Catherine Donovan. You start reading. It's a very interesting reading. We'll come to that with your first exception. So we are introducing that whole concept of that when you look at section 300, it's a gender neutral law. It applies to whoever, whether it's a man or a woman. It is supposed to provide protection to victims, whether they're men and women. But when you start looking at who are the actors in terms of offenders and the victims, you will find lots of gender dimensions there. And when I use the word gender, I use it in distinction with sex. Sex of the person is the biological sex. Traditionally, we had the humanity divided into binary of sex, male and female. With the Nalsa judgment, there is a now legal recognition. These people always existed. But the law did not take cognizance of them for providing any rights and benefits. We did have a law at one point of time during British Raj, where their very existence was criminalized. There was a Criminal Tribes Act in which the third, especially the Hijras and transgender persons, were categorized. A lot of their activities were assumed to have been, the criminal activity they're indulging in. There was a declaration that people belonging to these tribes are criminals. That has been abolished, but the stigma has remained, even for that group of people. But today we do recognize that there is certainly human beings on sex categorization have got more sexes than just two. That's one thing we have to remember. And when we read the definitions earlier, man has been defined, woman has been defined. But if somebody is neither a man nor a woman, or doesn't want to identify as a man and woman, then all those sections which are using these terms of man and woman do not apply to them. And that creates lots of issues there. But this section, at this point of time, we are looking at the law from the perspective of the women. When women are the offenders, when women are the victims, and how the law has been interpreted. So we'll continue with that theme as we go along in this course when we come to other gender neutral defenses as well. So here we are trying to understand whether the construction of excuse, when we say it has to be a reasonable excuse which will be acceptable to judges for the judicial reasoning. So in this case, the judges said when the husband was in hot pursuit, she got into a state of panic, she jumped into the well. That constitutes excuse within the meaning of 304thly, and therefore she is liable for culpable homicide and not murder. So moving on to the second case, Gyarsi Bai. And Diwakar was to tell us more about this case. So tell us, Diwakar.
Yes, ma'am. Gyarsi Bai and her three children, sister-in-law and her sister-in-law and husband reside together. And Gyarsi Bai and his sister-in-law, her sister-in-law, quarrel each other on regular basis. And sometime Gyarsi Bai husband slap her for picking up a quarrel. And one day when his husband is not at home, she get up in quarrel with her sister-in-law. And the sister-in-law said her to get out of the house. And the Gyarsi Bai come out of house saying that she is going to jump in a well with her three children. And then he threw herself and three children in a well. And after that, the passerby see them and saved the appellant, but the three children were already died.
Yeah. So the woman was saved, she was rescued, but the three children died. So the issue is, there are again two issues: culpable homicide, whether she's to be convicted for murder, and also for attempt to commit suicide. And I have not spoken about attempt to commit suicide at all at this point. We'll return to that again after. First, our primary focus in these two cases was on fourthly. Incidentally, very quickly, I just mentioned to you that 309 attempt to commit suicide is the only category of offense in which attempt is punishable. Completion of the act is not punishable because the accused person is no more there. Having said that, we do know that later on in the Mental Health Act, now presently this has been decriminalized. Attempt to commit suicide is no more a criminal offense. It is an occasion where that statute itself says that it is an occasion to provide psychological support. But certainly in 1946 or whenever we're talking about these cases, 309 was very much a punishable offense, and there's been questions that why somebody who is trying to kill herself be liable for any criminal liability. What do you think is the rationale for punishing a person who wants to take their own life? They're not going to attack anybody else. Why should they be punished for even the 6 months? It was up to 6 months. No, I forget now. What is the 309? How much is the punishment possible?
Up to 1 year.
Up to 1 year. So why should anybody be? So we have a full topic talking about 309 where we look at Gankor and other cases. So we'll revert to this idea of culpable of 309 attempt to commit suicide. Rationale, there was challenge, declared unconstitutional, then restored back. So all that conversation we'll have later. So for the time being, we'll put the discussion on 309 on shelf. We'll focus on 302 fourthly. So in these circumstances, the question is she liable for murder of her children? And the judges have said,
She is.
yes, she's liable. Now, what is the reasoning? And they have distinguished Gyasibai's case from Dhirajia and Supadi. Supadi is another case referred to in Gyasibai, in Dhirajia. So in that one, again, another woman was being beaten up. She runs away. The husband follows. She jumps into the well. And the judges said, no offense.
And the circumstances were very different in these two
Yes,
cases. Like in
No,
Dhirajia,
in Supadi and Dhirajia, what was the difference?
Ma'am, in Supardi, ma'am, she had no knowledge of that she is carrying a baby on her back.
Yeah, so the baby was in the back. So the judge is in a state of mind, she forgot that she had a child.
Yes, yes.
But when the baby was in her lap, she remembered that there's baby in the, in the lap. So that is how the first distinction was made between Supadi and where Supadi conviction did not happen for culpable homicide. In Gyasibai, we have a conviction for culpable homicide. And in Dhirajia, we have a conviction for murder. So why is it?
you're saying
ma'am,
the opposite.
you are saying that
Dhirajia it is culpable homicide and Gyasibai it is for murder.
No, Gyasibai is murder. So in Supadi, they said not culpable homicide. In Dhirajia, they said culpable homicide. In Gyasibai, they said murder. And in Gyasibai, the judges have distinguished the first two cases, saying that the first is different on facts because the child, she was not even aware of when she jumped into the well. In the second one, it was a state of panic. In this one, there's nobody in hot pursuit.
Yeah.
So do you agree with this judgment? That this is the right reasoning and she has been rightly convicted for murder?
Her intention was mollified. She only committed suicide because she wanted her sister-in-law to suffer, because if she died, the whole blame would come on her. And that was her reason for jumping into the well. And if she was that...
Nirupam, hold on a second, just 1 second, okay? Whether, no, even if suppose she was charged for abetment to commit suicide, if they all died, this was a suicide case. The sister-in-law at the most would have been punished for abetment to commit suicide. Do you think that punishment was more important to her than the lives of her 3 children? So what is your construction of this mother who takes her 3 children with her to jump into the well? She declared that this is what I'm going to do, and nobody stopped her. So she takes her 3 children. So there are a lot of questions there. Jiten wanted to say something.
Ma'am, in Dhirajia case, ma'am, the woman is under the threat, and in Gyasibai case, she can avoid that circumstances or the.
So tell me what are, again look at Gyasibai, which year is it?
Ma'am, it is in 1953.
1953. So in 1953, and also we can always talk about it today also, but in 1953, what were her options to avoid this violence, which has driven her to the point of committing suicide?
She could have gone to the police or to her own
498 is IPC.
Okay, she goes to the police and files what complaint in 1953?
498 IPC.
1953, we did not have 498.
Ma'am, it was in 1983 when 498 came. So I was
so
also
498
thinking
तो था नहीं. So 1953 में what were her options? What do you think? Was she an educated woman?
No.
What will be your sense of her? In 19, so she was not educated. Could she have earned a living for
She can
herself?
avoid the.
So tell me now, how will she avoid that violence?
Yes. Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, she could have gone to her own house, telling that her husband and sister-in-law doesn't treat her well and all that.
So where she should have gone and done what?
Ma'am, gone there, lived there, and
Where?
even
Where?
her,
On
even
where?
her,
On where?
To her
On where?
parental house, ma'am,
to her
parental house.
After marriage in 1953, a married woman did not have a right of residence in her maternal home.
she could have gone and worked.
This is also
Even
not right, ma'am. A
she
person can commit
uneducated,
suicide
she
or
would have worked as a servant or something.
What kind of work she would have got?
Servant or something, fruit seller, anything which.
Where
will
would she have
ensure
stayed?
that-
No, where she would have stayed? She could have certainly become a Rachel. No, she could have become a concubine of somebody. That was certainly an option. Is that what we wanted her to do?
Not at all.
Then what else could she have done? Could anybody would have given her residence? If her own parents are not giving her residence, the law doesn't provide her a right of residence. Where would she live? Where would her children be for three small children she has?
But she also take the life of 3 children, ma'am.
Yeah, so the whole question is why? Why did she take the life of her 3 children? Why she took them away? She was unhappy. She could have gone and jumped into the well. Why do you think she took her 3 children with her?
Ma'am, to make the offense more grave so that her
What is the
husband
offense?
and-
What is the offense for which anybody else would have been held liable for she jumping into the well with the 3 children? It's her act.
Ma'am, she think
How
that
would anybody else be liable?
after her, no one will care her children.
So you have all these experiences of Soteli Ma, the stepmother. She would not expect that her husband wasn't going to get married. She did not expect that the sister-in-law will look after the children. She thinks, and not only she thinks, we all assume that it is the mother who has to look after the children. Nobody else looks after children. Our law even today says child care leave will be taken by the mother up to the age of 18. So even by the social practices, by the legal provisions, it was assumed that it is she alone who is responsible to look after children. So if she is in a state where she is ready to kill herself, on whose, for whom she should trust to look after her children?
Nobody
Do you think
accepts
the
her.
husband would not have? So do you think the father would not have remarried and got another woman, and that woman would have surely treated them well? Do we have any guarantee? With all the folklore and the real situation, we have even in the English literature, we have the Cinderella story.
Does that probability that her children won't be treated fairly after she dies justifies that she should kill her children before she dies?
I do not know. I'm asking you. I'm asking you that if you were that mother, Nirupam, I'm asking you to think of yourself as that mother who is being ill-treated, not only by the sister-in-law, but by the husband also. The husband is providing no support. And also, this has been, again, in this case also recognized that as is the want of husband to beat up the wife. So we are having these 2 cases a decade apart, which are both of them are talking about domestic violence. And the fact that because the fact that we've got 3 children, which means that the marriage was in subsistence for some time. It's not that maybe in Supadias, in Dhirajia, We have a 6-month-old baby. So maybe it was a marriage only of a year and a half, perhaps. But if we have a woman with 3 children, how many years of married life she must have had already?
7.
Maybe 5 years.
7
No,
or
if you talk about earliest, 6 years, 7 years,
7
the
years.
minimum she would have been married. If in 6 years she has driven to a point where she is ready to kill herself with the children, there must be, she's not insane. She's a reasonable person. So what were the options available to women in those scenarios? And even today, what are the options available to married women who are subjected to long-term domestic violence to do? We say, they can file a complaint under Domestic Violence Act. Now we have a legislation. So she files a complaint. So police comes and says, you are restrained to come to reach your own house. You cannot enter that house anymore. This restraint order has come. Do you think the police will be standing there every day to check that this man doesn't enter this house? So he enters the house, beats up the wife again. But previously, 498 was even much more difficult. So she files a complaint. Let's assume it's a post-1983 case. So she files a complaint under 498A. After filing the complaint, the husband is arrested. Do you think she will be allowed to stay in that house by the other members of the family?
No.
So by making that complaint, she becomes homeless, either with or without children. Do you think she will survive if she's made homeless without children? She will die of that itself, the separation from her children. If she takes her children along with her, she's again in a very difficult scenario. Yes, Abhishek.
Ma'am, this is the reason the judges, since the judges convicted her under 302 and 309, but still I think they said that government should commute the sentence of the woman, because the circumstances were so compelled that she didn't have any other help, so she could have improvised her situation. So that is why she took the I would say the gravest step to kill herself as well as to kill their children. Can we say that, ma'am?
Yeah, but they have also normalized, as it is normal for the husbands to do. So there was no focus on the husband who is creating this scenario. The whole focus is on her. Why there are no sentences saying how can the husband behave in that manner? How can husbands beat their wives? No, husband's conduct is not under scrutiny, which has led this woman to do this activity. The whole focus on how could she do it? Nobody is asking how could the husband beat her up? Have you ever thought of that question? Why and how could the husband beat her up? Are you entitled to beat your wives? And then say, even if I beat her up, she should leave the house. You should be leaving the house, na? You are the one who was giving that. So we do not ask that question to the men who are causing that violence. We put the whole blame on that woman. Subsequently, our law is still developing. So we have this case of, which is kind of slightly different context, but we have the recognition that if women are in that scenario, very many women in other scenario, in long-term domestic violence, they bear it for a long time, then they explode one day. When they explode, it takes a very, very violent turn. Either they will kill themselves, they will kill their husband, they will kill their children. So it is an explosion of those emotions she's been containing for long 7, 8, 10 years. That's an excuse. If you want to actually understand what is this woman going through, so this is not related to only today, now. And that's the major difference between the understanding of the judge of the situation in Dhirajia and in Garsibai. In Dhirajia, they focused only now and here. Now and here, when the action took place, what was her state of mind? But they have not considered what was her state of mind being in a domestic violence situation for 7 long years. That's not the question they have asked. That's not the question the lawyers have raised. And your generation of lawyer has to take cognizance of this fact. That when anybody, usually this is a woman, but it can be a man also. So anybody who has been in a long-term violent situation, they respond differently than people in non-violent situations in this similar circumstance. It was a one-off incident of the mother-in-law or the sister-in-law saying something. It's different. But the judge recognized that there were continuous frequent fights. There were occasional slapping by the husband. So judges are cognizant of this fact. But the fact that it has been going on for a long period of time, in judges' understanding, did not constitute excuse within the meaning of that section. So whether, when we are considering the question for us is to consider that when we are thinking of this term excuse, are we looking at this point of time when she jumped into the well, whether there was any pressing need, or whether what was her state of mind at that point of time when she took that step, because of a long-term background behind that. And we will see in the other case, which is Nanavati's case, you will find a number of instances where the judges have given benefit of historical background of the incident. So a man kills a wife on sudden and great provocation. And the judges said the wife had been in long-term illicit relationships. This man had told her many times not to stop doing that. So on that particular day, when he chastised her for this, she retorted back, saying that I know you are also having illicit relationship outside marriage. So that made him lose his temper because of the long-term torture he must have been going through in his mind because of the manner in which the wife had been behaving. So they say, yeah, grave and sudden provocation. So in case of men, they could relate to what the state of mind of this man would be because of this long-term problem he had been facing and had not been able to handle. So then the judges did not use, we have a terminology for it, what we call as the slow burn syndrome. So our terminology is not used, but we will see those cases in cases of grave and sudden provocation, where the judges will say, no long-term background situation. Not just now. It is not only that at this point of time, whether there was sufficient provocation. If this was the first time incident, they would not have said. So you will find that in case of men suddenly exploding and losing their temper, judges have paid attention to their background story. In her case, the judges have not paid attention to their background story. There's a double standard. How do you judge this woman's conduct and how you have been judging the men's conduct? There's a lot more to be focused on. The other thing is also, so one is this whole idea of the comparison we have seen in different cases. When we come to Nanavati, I will suggest all of you start reading Nanavati. And I think that's what we are going to start with in the next class. What is?
Did the defendant's advocate argued on these points? What you are
Precisely not. They themselves were not aware of these aspects. But that was 1940. What was the year? 46. Now we are in 2021. Now we are in 2021. Lot of knowledge has developed. Abhishek, please note yourself. So since 1946 and 1953, lot more knowledge has developed, lot more critical understanding has developed. So maybe, but even when you look at these cases I'm referring to, we will again come back to this whole aspect when we look at Nanavati. Look at the years of those judgments. These are the contemporary judgments of the same time when Gyarji and Dhirajia happened. So at that time, judges could relate to the man's agony of a long-term background. They could not relate to the woman's agony because beating wives was a normal thing. Wives being adulterous was not normal. So if the wife was, so they were very clearly conscious of the fact that they had accepted this as a norm, that if the husband beats up, it is something you can't do anything about. So 1940s and 50s, they were aware of the problem, but they did not see it as a problem. The other part is, this is how normal life goes on. So husbands beat up wives, wives get upset, and if there is a immediate panic or something, we will give something. But if she goes and saying, I'm going to kill myself, too bad. She had the intention to kill, or she had under dangerous act, etc. All these criteria fits into well, and yeah, culpable homicide, the conviction for murder. But in the same contemporary period, they did recognize the background information to determine what was the state of mind of this man for him to lose temper. We have another case where the wife was adulterous. So he kind of cheated the man, and then he changed the residence to another village. And after some time, he found the wife having food with that man. Not in a relationship, but just having food with that man. He lost temper and killed. So judges said, no, the background, he was not expecting that he will follow this here also. So they're looking at the background, what happened, what preceded this incident. Otherwise, seeing your wife having lunch with somebody, having food with somebody, should not allow you to lose your temper. He says, no, the background information has informed him. And therefore, his losing the temper was reasonable. But in case of women, they have not looked at, they have not seen that as a problem. That domestic violence is a problem whereby something needs to be done to protect the woman. We need to recognize the vulnerability the woman is in, the absence of options she has. None of that discussion form part of this discussion in case of both these victims, women offenders, actually victims who turned into offenders. But in other cases, they have recognized the victimhood of the men when they turned offenders. So certainly the man was victimizing the wife, is having a relationship, not listening to him, etc. So that's a very genuine category where the husband is actually being victimized by the wife. And the judges took note of that victimization on a long term and say his state of mind is governed by the background in which he has been living with this woman for such a long time. That did not inform this judgment from the same era. That's the point I'm making. So suppose today, forget about then, we're now in 2021. So in 2021, if the same incident happens, so there is a wife who is being ill-treated by the in-laws. And she has got 3 children. And one day she has a fight and the husband, of course, has been beating her up now and then. So she does the same activity. Whether we think that the women have better options today, but my position is that at that point of time, she had no other option because of the condition she was. It's a village story. We do not expect the village woman in 1953 to have been educated enough to find a job, a decent job to bring up her 3 children. And we do know that women who separate from their husbands, especially in that, even today this is true, who separate from their husbands for whatever disagreements, they are seen as available for sex by men. They are very easy target for sexual harassment and sexual propertization. They will become sexual property of somebody. So if you want to live an honorable life, we've got lots of women who have been in domestic violence. They file not for divorce, but they file for judicial separation because having the tag of being a married woman is important to them. But that tag protects them from male sexual aggression. So it is their life experiences. Whether the lived experiences of women should inform when we think about creating standards for determining was it reasonable for this woman to do it or not. We know that because when we talk about reasonableness, so I'll give you a reference to that article. If you want, you can read that. It is a study of cases from 1900 to 1940, I think. So, and saying that how the judicial decisions have applied double standards in determining what is reasonable. This guy titled Reasonable Man, Reasonable Woman, and Reasonable Expectations by Usha Ramanathan. I'll post the article. I have the copy, so I'll post the article. Read that. It's a very interesting analysis, reflection on how and it is not the judges who are being very conscious about it. Oh, this is a woman victim, so a woman offender will decide in that manner. This is a man offender will decide in man. This is the experiences and exposure of the judges, their training, their education, their sensitivity, which determines. So it's not a conscious bias, but it is a bias which most of us have because we have been brought up in that society thinking that this is normal. I'm quite sure that many of the students in this class would have seen in their families, in their neighborhoods, in their relatives, where the husband has given a slap to the wife or has been having lots of either minor violence or major violence. Exceptionally, you would have found a woman also doing the same thing. But most of the instances you can relate in your own lives would be men abusing the women. And we've been brought up like that. Our parents, many of our parents, parents of many of us did that. fathers. And we thought this was normal. And therefore, when we became in that position, we took over the role model from our fathers. We have a patriarchal society, we have patriarchal family, and that does make us unaware of, and the law is replete with those instances where the law, in the formulation itself, in the manner in which we make laws, in the way we interpret the law, is guided by the experiences of men of how they would have reacted in that situation. Not realizing that women could not have reacted in the same manner men in the same situation would have responded. If a man was abused by the wife for 10 long years, he will just leave. We do know some men who have committed suicide themselves and killed their whole family when they're under financial pressures. We know lots of farmer suicides are happening. Why are these men killing themselves? They had options, no? If this woman had an option, those all men also have options. So if a farmer survives while attempt to commit suicide, and he has given poison to the whole family, they die. Will we react in the same manner? Or we will have sympathy for this man who was under so much financial pressure that he took the step of killing his wife and children and trying to kill himself also? Or will we feel differently? If we will have sympathy for this farmer who is trying to kill himself and his family because of that economic pressure, we can relate to that. We're not able to relate to this woman who is undergoing the same pressure and she's got no options. This man, the farmer, also thinks they got no option. This woman also thought she had no option. Relationship of men and women and children is recognized differently than the relationship of men with children. Look at the ministry. We have Article 15.3. Article 15.3 says, so we have Article 14, which says equality. Then we have 15.3 specifying lots of grounds on which discrimination cannot be made, and one of them is sex. And sex, we said, is biological category. Gender is how we are supposed to act and react as a man or a woman. And now, of course, talking about the third as well. So there's a socialization, there is an expectation of a certain kind of behavior. If a man behaves, we have a student who dances very beautifully, but his dance moves are very feminine. He has been really, really harassed for having feminine form of dancing. Women behaving like men, they're respected. Oh, they are powerful women. A man acting like a woman is seen as a sissy, as somebody less than a man. So very categorically, among your own fraternity, you do not think that if a man is not acting like a macho, he's a complete man. But women dressing up like boys, having the same jeans and trousers and suits and business suits and all, they are seen as powerful women. A man wearing a salwar kameez, Ramdev Baba was all trolled for that. So somewhere there's a very, very clear understanding that what men go through, what men experience, how the men react, is the standard by which we judge whether this woman reacted reasonably. Not looking at her life, her experiences. So that's the thought I wanted to plant today so that we can have this discussion later on. I'm quite sure that some of you have some responses. What do you say? So I'm wanting you to think and actually share your feelings about it. So when you have this example of a farmer trying to kill himself and the family, so family dies and he survives, the charges would be still the same. Murder for the wife and the children and attempt to commit suicide. Do you feel the same way about this farmer as we have felt about Gyarsi Bai?
No.
No? I'm glad to hear that, because that's where the sensitivity comes in, that we are able to relate to the experiences of people who have had similar experiences. It can happen across class, it can happen across gender, it can happen across religion, it can happen across caste, it can happen between economic classes, because we are not able to put ourselves, we are not able to relate to their situation, this other person. We do not know that other person. I do not know the experiences of that other person. the moment we become aware that, and we're not even talking about individual one person, we're talking about the other as a group of people. So other as a group of people have different experiences of life. If we are high caste person, our life experience will be different. Even though I may not be at all practicing caste, the experience of a person coming from what we classify as the lower caste, scheduled tribe, Dalit, whatever name you want to give, experience of that person in life will be very different. But we're not able to relate. We always think of this other as manipulative, as the ones who misuse the law, as the ones who are trying to harass these other people who have been now disempowered because of the law. That is what our general response has been. We need to question that. We need to ask ourselves, am I putting myself in the shoes of this other person as a class, not as an individual? Sometimes, of course, we look at the individual also in certain circumstances. But today we're talking about women as a group of people. Women, married women as a group of people subjected to domestic violence. Women as a group of people who have not been given equal rights to men by law, not only by society, by law. So in those scenarios, how do we construct a scenario to say, is it constituting an excuse acceptable under our section 304th? So the moment we start asking those questions, then our answers may differ. We as a lawyer of 21st century at least have to make that beginning. To say you cannot keep the background out to determine what was the state of mind. It is not only immediately at that point of time. You have to look at the background, and we have been. There are many number of cases where we have looked at the backgrounds. There was something else somebody said.
Ma'am, I want to ask one doubt.
One second, Tushar. The other thing I was raising was the relationship between women and children. We do know that women are the only human beings who can give birth to a child. So there are two phases in her life, in her relationship to the child. One is when the child is in her womb. 100%, if she doesn't care for that child in the womb, the child will not be born alive. So it is part of her body which comes out at the end of the pregnancy. And then we do a physical cutting of the umbilical cord, because of which these become then two separate bodies. So loss has two separate body, but she knows that this product is from my body. So whether she has rights of ownership over that body, whether she has obligation of care, what is her relationship with that child which has come out of her womb? Her relationship with that child is of care, because it's she who has brought it onto this. Certainly, there's a contribution of the man, and this from the man provides, but the actual formation of the body of this new child is by the woman's body and blood. Having given birth to this child, the emotional cord she has with this child are not broken, are not cut off by the umbilical cord. Psychological studies also say that when children are born, both boys and girls, their first relationship in this world in terms of forming relationship is with the mother, because she breastfeeds. Breastfeeding is also an instance of woman caring for the other. The other is only suckling, is only getting the care, is not providing anything to the mother apart from the feelings she has for the child. So the first relationship of both boys and girls is towards the mother. Then they recognize the third, the father, in their relationship. There's a triangle, it's not only one-to-one relationship. And he goes through a period of envy with the father. The boys go through that. But when it comes to puberty, that is the time when men have to cut their emotional umbilical cord from the mother, because they see that men in the world behave differently than women do. So unless they cut off their umbilical cord with the mother, the emotional umbilical cord with the mother, they cannot come into their own. For them to become men, they have to now start relating to their father and cut their emotional ties or behavioral ties from the mother. Women do not go through that process because they continue to relate with their mother in the same manner as they were since their birth and subsequently also. So the construction of the world for men is that for me to become a man, I have to cut my ties in order to find my own identity. For women, that's not the issue. So that's another conversation we have, whereby how women construct this world and how men construct this world. Men construct the world, I vis-a-vis all others, against me. I have to find my own independent identity. Women are, by nature and by the manner in which they bring the children into view, they have a relationship of care with the other. So the law, when it talks about rights, when it talks about how to organize society, it focuses a lot more on rights. My right means I have all the right if there's no other human being. So all other human beings are competing with me. I have to have more space and push the other. So for the men to survive and grow, they think society should be individualistic. For the women, they have the relationship of care. They care for the ill, they care for the baby, they care for the fetus, they care. So the whole relationship with the other is that of care. And that is another explanation as to why these women stay in domestic violence situation, why they would leave. They keep on hoping that by their love and affection, devotion, they will be able to change this violent man. Because she doesn't have a problem with the man. She does have a problem with the violence, and she hopes it will stop. She cares for that man who is violent. And it's a very ununderstandable scenario from the perspective of the male experience of lives. It's also all these theories are also there, that when you look at human body, there are 3 situations in which necessarily 2 human bodies come in physical contact with each other. One category is sexual intercourse. Second category is breastfeeding. The third category is, what is the third category? This third two situations. No, but that I'm forgetting the third one. There's a third one also. Pregnancy. Of course, pregnancy. There are 3 situations. So in this situation of sexual intercourse, both derive pleasure and the matter is over as far as the man is concerned. For the woman, the potential of another life taking place in her body is very much there. So the connectedness or the possibility of connectedness starts with the 2 bodies joining with sexual intercourse. If she becomes pregnant, certainly she has to care if she wants the child to be born alive. The third one, breastfeeding. In the latter 2 situations, her relationship with the other is that of care to the other. And that is how she relates to the world. So in her understanding of her relationship with the children, this is her body's extension. She doesn't think children are independent of her. So her relationship with the children is not, okay, somebody else will look after. She believes, I am the only one. And her experience of these 7 years, 8 years, whatever how old her children were, that she has been the primary carer, in fact, sole carer most of the time. The husbands are there, the fathers are there to look after the economic needs of the children and the family. Today, a lot more boys are taking active part in childbearing and child rearing, not bearing, child rearing, but only in big towns, small numbers still. So majority of the experience of women as mothers has been, and the law says she will take childcare leave, she can take childcare leave up to the age of 18. So by law, by society, by her own physical experience, she believes she is the sole provider for her children's care. How many of you in your families have found that when your brothers or cousins or you yourself had your board exams, who took leave if your mother was in a paid employment? Who took leave even if she was not in the paid employment? Who stood up with you at night and provided you tea or support or coached you? Was it your father? Even though your father was more educated, I'm expecting that your father in most of the cases would be more educated. Did he teach you? Did he spend time when you were having your board exams with you? So if she believes that if she dies, her children will be completely uncared for. They will be neglected. They will be subjected to violence, and she takes with them. Is that not an excuse? How do we construct her state of mind when she takes her 3 children, not even one, 3 children she takes with her? What is her understanding of the options the children would have when she dies?
Nothing at all.
They will
No,
be
no, that's
subjected to same domestic violence.
Yeah, no. So we do not know. We do not know for sure. That is sure that we do not know, because what the future has in store, we do not know. But what is the reasonable foreseeability for this woman? Can she reasonably foresee that no, the husband will marry again, he will get another wife who will look after my children? Can she be certain of that? Is there a likelihood, probability? It's just a mere chance. It's not that all stepmothers don't look after. So, but what is the expectation? Can we expect that a woman who is going to kill herself, she will expect, oh, the new woman will come and she will really look after my children, so I don't have to worry about my children? Whether that state of mind is of any relevance in determining excuse under fourthly? Should it be any part of that conversation? That's the question I want you to think about. And when you work as a lawyer, remember this. Remember this conversation when you're looking at the conduct of the other persons. Some of the conduct you'll be able to relate. Maybe because you're the same background, same class, same education, same biradri, whatever yours, there may be commonality. You will be able to relate to that person's agony much more easily than anybody else who is very different from you. This may be difference of sex. So I'm quite sure that some of us would have a lot of problem. Lot of us who are heterosexual would have problem with the homosexuals. Daughters of who have got no problem about our gender identity would not understand, how can your body is of a male person, how can you think you're a woman? We just can't relate to that concept. I'm going through all these conversations in my other course on gender justice. And we have students who have come and shared their experiences as the trans persons, who say what they go through. But unless you meet those people, unless you get to know their lives, we can't relate. We're like, yeah, ajay, weird se log hain. How can they think like that? This is abnormal. But it is abnormal only if you do not know their lives. Once you start, and whoever that other may be, it may be just another friend who has come from a different background. It's nothing to do with sexuality, nothing to do with gender identity. But a person who has struggled to reach law faculty, take the LLB exam, with no family background, he's a first generation learner. Experience of reaching the law faculty of that person will be very different from somebody who is third or fourth generation English speaking family background. Completely different experiences. Same faculty, same class, same teachers. So certainly we need to now learn and open our minds to understand that there are these other people who are as much human beings as we are. We cannot have gradation that these people are okay people and these are not okay people. So coming back, now I will stop talking and you have to talk. So today, if a woman is in the same scenario as Gyarsi Bai, what do you think are her options? Anil Karki is saying it's such an emotional class I'm enjoying. I don't want you to enjoy, I want you to feel, sensitive about it. Law is for whom? Human beings. Human beings are people with emotions. We have people doing PhDs on this subject, emotions and law. Is there a relationship between emotions and law? Okay, what is this donating blood? I forgot I'm not able to connect to this. Shivangini has said, ma'am, by donating blood. What was the question to which you responded this?
Bodily connections, the type of bodily connections, so she thought that donating blood is one of them.
Which, okay, my mistake. She was, I think, doing something else and the message got posted here.
No, ma'am, we were talking about the physical contact of two bodies, how, what are the options?
Nirupam Shivangani herself has written, it is by mistake. You don't have to provide an explanation. She herself has written, it is by mistake that she wrote that. I do not know what was the context. So she might be having some other chat. No, all of you don't pay full attention. No, congratulate for करते हो मगर attention थोड़ी करते हो.
Ma'am, I was having one doubt. Instead of, ma'am, in Gyarsibai versus the state, instead of holding the Gyarsibai for 304, should not be the Kesarbai who was.
Tushar, Gyarsibai is not 304, it's 302.
No, in that case only, should Kesarbai, who was sister-in-law, who told him to leave the home, should she be held in 299(3)? That is, she was having a knowledge of the act, and also she was knowing that when Gyarsibai told her that.
No, tell me. No,
Yes,
go
ma'am.
back. You have to learn to answer yourself by applying the knowledge you have already acquired.
Yes,
So, 299, which clause? You
Third,
will hold
ma'am.
sister-in-law liable.
Third one, ma'am, with the knowledge that he is
Third
likely.
one, no, act. No, what is an act? Which is
Act-
likely to cause death.
Yes, ma'am.
मैं तो बताऊं ना.
299, 304, ma'am. A.
अरे बताओ तो सही. What? So you are saying 304.
Act, ma'am. Act is this, that she asked her to leave the home, and in reply, the Gyarsibai
No,
also
she
told
didn't.
them.
No. She didn't ask her to leave the home. It is.
Ma'am, but it
Gyarsibai
is
was
written
angry
here.
to leave. What?
From
That
the
is
statement
written-
of Kesarbai and Narayan, it is clear that
Okay.
on the day
So,
of
okay,
morning.
okay, right. You're right. So she said, घर छोड़ दो, निकल जाओ घर से.
हाँ जी.
Whether that act amounts to an act which is likely to cause death.
Ma'am, but in
But
in
नहीं,
reply,
पहले मुझे इसका जवाब दे दो पहले. इसका जवाब दो. Because we have to apply the language of the section. Does
Yes.
this act amount to intention to cause death?
ma'am,
No.
it is
Does
a
it
connection.
amount to intentionally causing injury? No. Does it amount to an act as is likely to cause death? घर से निकल जाओ.
नहीं मैम, ये
That's what
इसको
she
अपन सीरीज ऑफ एक्ट्स में देखेंगे ना, बिकॉज सेकंड एक्ट
बताओ
जो हो
ना.
रहा है, Gyarsibai said that I would be suiciding, मतलब I would be throwing me and the sons into well. So
हाँ.
both that should be seen in a single act now.
Okay, we saw both the acts in the single act. But whether
Yes, ma'am.
fact that she did not stop Gyarsibai for leaving the house with the 3 children, does this act amount to omission?
Not completely, but I think.
Then, but में तो अटक गए ना.
हाँ जी.
When she had no obligation to stop her, then her omission is not part of her act.
Okay.
You have to learn, no? Start, because this is, no, usually students have the tendency to madam se puch lo. Start applying your mind, because only in 3 years then you'll be able to train yourself to consult the language of the law to determine whether this consequence can follow, whether this liability can follow or not.
But
So in the
had
initial time, in the initial years, it is a very great temptation to deal with, to treat your teachers as encyclopedia.
Ma'am, had this case been in the current scenario, so should
Yeah.
it be should in this case we would connect 498A with the 300 or 299, because cruelty
That's
is
a
the.
different offense, no? That's a different offense. We are not concerned here what would be the liability of the sister-in-law or of the husband in these circumstances. We will consider that question when we come to that. Today we are talking about
Can
that if this incident
sister-in-law
happens
be-
today. Again,
Can
I'm saying please focus on a woman in 21st century, in 2021, who does the same act, who responds in the same exact same manner as Gyarsibai did. And you are that woman's lawyer. What will you argue to defend her against the charge of murder?
Ma'am, the background obviously. The
ऐसा नहीं argue
cause
करके
was-
बताओ. ऐसा नहीं, पूरा करो कि this is what I'm going to
Ma'am,
argue. Assume I'm the judge and
we would,
speak to me defending your client.
ma'am, we would use 498A along with the 299, because in 498A explanation 1 they have written that any willful conduct which is of such a nature as likely to drive a woman to commit suicide.
No, then you will want to frame a charge under 498A against the husband.
Yes,
We are
ma'am. In
not
that case.
concerned with the charge, what charge we will ask for the husband. We are concerned with how to defend Gyasi Bai, who killed her children, whose children died when she jumped into the well. Having said all that, what has happened in this scenario?
Ma'am,
How will you defend her as her
For
lawyer?
She was tortured for those seven years, given beating at regular intervals because she got into fight with her sister-in-law with no explanation provided why he doesn't talk to his sister, but why does she fight with her, and tormented for all those 7 years. That mental agony that caused a burst at that sudden situation when she was told to leave the house at the moment. She found no other according to her, there was no other means for her to survive. She was not educated at all. She could not go and earn her living, and she couldn't obviously go to her home. So she and her children would have died of hunger. So that was the most relevant thing to do, well, according to her.
And so
that is an excuse for her committing suicide with her children, although she survived, but her children got killed in the process.
MB is Madhya Bharat. At one point of time, that was the jurisdiction.
Ma'am,
so okay, that's a good attempt at focusing. So you will have to go step by step because we are defending her under 304th. So first you will say, we agree that the act was imminently dangerous. We also agree that she had knowledge that it was likely to cause death. But there is an excuse because of which she should not be held liable for murder under this clause. The excuse is coming from the background she has been living in this marital home. She has been married for X number of years. And this has been accepted. This has not been challenged by the defense that she was not subjected to continuous domestic violence, not only by the sister-in-law, but by the husband also. She was in the state of mind where she saw no future, no safe future for herself or for her children. Nobody has been looking after her children excepting herself. And once she reached that state of mind, because of the slow burn, slowly she has been getting angrier and helpless. The other word we use in our arguments is learned helplessness. That they learn that they are so helpless they can do nothing. And this has come from experiments where they put a mouse or a deer in a place which is enclosed by a electric wire. So the animal tries to run away, gets electric shock, and then they learn that they cannot escape the electric wire. After some time, the people experimenting remove the electric wire. The animal will not cross that boundary because they have learned that they're helpless. Women also learn helplessness. They have complained to the police. So she had complained to the police. She got a restraint order. She had gone back 5 times to her mica. She has done everything in her life, in her power, to stop this violence. But it did not happen despite all the laws made by the government to protect her. So she was in a state of learned helplessness where she had to take recourse to self-help. And the only option she found, given the educational background she had, given the fact that she has got no property, given the fact that there was nobody treating her children, looking after her children, she felt in such a state of helplessness that the only way she thought she can help herself and her children is by jumping into the well, because there were no prospect of life left to her. And this state of mind created by the long-term violence given by that family, her own family, is sufficient excuse within the meaning of this section. Therefore, it cannot be, conviction cannot be for murder. So you have to articulate by reference to the language of the law, by reference to the terminology we have. So referring to the circumstances was very good. Nirupam done a good job that all this has happened and this has led to. make it a little more sophisticated by using the language of the section. Somebody had a question. Tushar had a question, I think.
It's done. I was asking that only.
So anybody else? Shakib was saying something. Shakib was saying something. Vicky, can you put a light on the recent case in Haryana where a mother slit the throat of her 3 daughters on societal pressure, basically for having so many daughters and not son? And she was booked under Section 302. Can the societal pressure is enough for gathering excuses under Section 300 fourthly? Though the matter clarifies the Section 300, causing intentionally bodily injury to cause death. That's a good example, good question. So what does the rest of the class feel? Whether this woman should be held guilty of murder of her daughters. She had slit their throats.
Ma'am, we should look into what was the motivation, what instilled that.
3 लड़कियां हैं, लड़कियों पे लड़कियां पैदा करती जा रही है. That's what she had been told. That's what this narration by Vicky tells us. He is asking this question only whether it will constitute an excuse.
Ma'am, I think it will, because in Haryana and some states, like giving birth to a girl child is seen as a very abominative act. And since she had given birth to 3 or 4 girl child at regular intervals, which means that the husband wanted the fact that 4 daughters were born in quick succession, which means that the husband wanted a boy child desperately, and when she couldn't produce it, she must have been tortured to that level that she had to slit the throat of the child because of the societal, the family pressure, and given the amount of knowledge she has, that is the only escape she thought she had, to kill her children so as to escape from all those banters of the family and all.
Have you seen, any of you have seen the film Provoked? Aishwarya Rai is in the lead in that film. Have you heard of that film? Provoked. It's a Hindi film done by, in which Aishwarya Rai is the lead woman, and it's based on a true story. Karanjit Ahluwalia, who was in England, an Asian woman married in England, and the husband was very abusive. 10 years she was in that marriage. She has 2 children from that marriage. She had some bones broken a couple of times. There were other injuries, but even grievous injuries have been caused. She had obtained twice restraint order. The violence did not stop. On the night before the incident, the husband asked her some money, and she refused. And he says, tomorrow morning, give it to me, otherwise I'm going to burn your cheek with the iron she was using. And he went to sleep. This woman then took out petrol, mixed some other liquid in it to make it more harmful, poured it on the husband's legs, and set him on fire. He died 4 days later of those burn injuries. He was charged with murder and convicted for murder by the first court. In the second court, the defense, women defense lawyers in that case, they brought out this whole concept of diminished responsibility due to slow burn syndrome. So they brought out medical reports in her case to show that she was not in complete control of her mind because of the slow burn she had been going through all these years of domestic violence. And the English court did accept that, gave her conviction for culpable homicide, and said imprisonment already undergone is enough for her. She was released after that. So in that case, again, the whole scenario, the whole argument, and they had a law, they had a specific section which said diminished responsibility. And the article, Catherine Donovan challenges, questions that approach, that when women react as a normal woman subjected to domestic violence, long term, all women go through this fourth phase, most of them go through this phase, and therefore there's nothing abnormal about it. But we have created we have created her state of mind as a medical condition and not as a normal human condition. But anyway, the point I was making was that in that case, the judges did recognize diminished responsibility, and in the English statute, they had a clause which says due to diminished responsibility, lesser category. We are trying to bring that concept of diminished responsibility by reference to excuse in this section. So in this case, the incident which Vicky had given us, we need to first find out more facts in this case, because on the face of it, it is murder, intention to. So in this case, what will be the section? Which part of the section 300 will be attracted? On the face of it, argument is separate because the police will charge. When the defense law, you will build up arguments.
300 clause.
And thirdly,
300 firstly.
With the
300 firstly.
300 firstly. So 201 first part and then 300 firstly. So that is a straightaway correct answer when you look at the facts as we have here. And she will be rightly charged with. So when it is charged, the trial has yet to complete. There's a two different words. She was charged with and then she was convicted. So if as a defense lawyer, we want to argue in her favor, what will be the facts we will need to know? Because the facts as stated by Vicky says, the apparent cause or the noted fact has been that she was harassed for having 3 children. What is the kind of information you will build up around this argument to say this woman has an excuse because of that thing? So somebody did mention Haryana as a state in terms of their approach toward daughter. You can look at what is the sex ratio in Haryana for the next generation. It was among the states, today I don't think it is, but it is still it was at one point of time, lowest women to girls to boys ratio. For 1,000 men, I think there were barely 600 some women. And we do know that in that state, a lot of women from Kerala were brought to marry one brother, and she was made a concubine for all the brothers. So therefore, a lot of exploitation has been happening in that particular state. We do know that it's a very apparently a patriarchal state. The ratio of the girl child in the next generation shows that. And we can look at the data for her district as well, where she was born. Then we can say that we will have to again cull out evidence from the neighbors, from the witnesses, because she is in the in-laws place. And whatever taunt she was getting, whether they were limited only in that family or she was publicly humiliated, because these facts are very bare facts. So as a defense lawyer, you will have to cull out a lot more information so that you can plead what Nirupam formulated, that because of these factors. So what has been the scenario with the other daughter-in-laws in that household, whether they have got sons? And we do know that the pressure on women in these circumstances is so tremendous. So assuming that these bare facts are sufficient, are the truth, we still need to, as a defense counsel, then we will need to find out evidence for that. But this is a newspaper reporting. But in the court of law, you cannot rely on newspaper reporting only. You need to establish the facts. So if you're able to establish all these facts, then you will argue on the same line that we're talking about, that the case will fall under the category of excuse. She will still liable for culpable homicide. It's not that she will not be liable for any offense, but whether it will be the offense. We have another interesting case recently where the first woman is to be hanged. I forget now which state she's from. She is to be hanged for having killed many members of her marital family with a boyfriend. And now the...
I'm Sabnam.
I'm UP. I'm from UP.
Sabnam.
UP. So now the son is moving the president, saying that save the life of my mother. And it's I forget now, 10 years old child, I believe. For 7 years, he was with the mother in prison. So in this case, the question has not arisen at all about what was her state of mind to have killed the whole family because of a boyfriend. And we are not asking that question also. That, no, for me, it's very intriguing. No, she's killed a whole family. Why? I think as a lawyer, it is important to understand the context of the action rather than just on the face of it saying no, because she might be your client. If she's your client, what kind of information will you gather? And I think it's very important in criminal law to understand what has led to this situation and then build up our arguments accordingly. So one level of lawyering is by understanding the legal language. The second line of lawyering is by looking at the details on the fact. All cases are won and lost on the facts. If you are able to prove facts which are relevant to your position, you make a case. But certainly you need to fit those facts into the periphery within the language of the law. So certainly if you are able to find it, all those facts and fit into there, then you can build up this argument by reference to diminished responsibility, by reference to the excuse category, by reference to the arguments and facts are the arguments by a lawyer are not limited only to the legal interpretation, but all or the legal language of a particular section. But how do you expand or narrow down the scope of that word? That's where your actual lawyering lies. Your lawyering has to come from ability to read law, interpret law, give different meaning to the same words in different contexts. All that is part of legal arguments. But you also need to learn that legal arguments will happen only after facts have been established. So what are the other facts which need to be, we need to have more facts for us to argue any other way. We can't say just because she has slit 3 children, the throats of 3 children, and there was societal pressure. We need to deconstruct societal pressure. What were the occasions? How frequently? Who was doing what? And it may be very well possible that the children are also being mistreated. So she killed them more because to save them from the inhuman treatment they were getting. So we do not know. We need to certainly have more facts. So I was saying the other day that this is a good example where we have the bare information, but we need to have more facts in order to make our argument. Good contribution, Vicky. Now, what is Shabnam case? Okay, this is the case you are referring to. The one I was mentioning, I think. Son is adopted by another couple. No, they have not been adopted. The child has been living because mother has not, as far as my knowledge goes from the child rights groups, that she is a woman, she's a friend of the woman, and she's looking after the child after he was, because till the age of 7, he was in the prison. Children beyond that age are not permitted to remain in the prison, so they had to move out. And therefore, he is being looked after. No adoption yet.
Ma'am, it was in the news, ma'am, that son was adopted and...
No. Newspaper reports are not always reliable. I will rely a lot more on the lawyers who were actually representing her. We have a center, 39A, in NLUD, which takes up all cases, 100% cases of death penalty. Because she was given death penalty, they were dealing with this case at a first-hand level. And they are saying that no, the child is only staying with them. They've offered to her, provide him care, but she has not been adopted yet. Adoption has got a whole long process. We have got a special legislation now.
Ma'am, do you think...
Rishabh?
Yeah, ma'am. I was saying that child was born in the jail. I read that in the newspaper.
That's why he was with the mother for the was 6. I thought it was 6, but they said till the age of 7 he was with the mother.
Yeah, ma'am.
Ma'am, whether this capital punishment in this particular case of Shabnam or whether in the case of Nirbhaya, ma'am, do you think this will going to answer the big question of
I don't believe in death penalties. I'm not a believer in death penalty at all.
Yes, ma'am. Because ultimately, ma'am, their capital punishment will not going to answer the big question of and सोसाइटी पे भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला इनके बाद और निर्भया के बाद
डेथ पेनल्टी अभी बहुत सारे लॉज में डेथ पेनल्टी दे दी उन्होंने सेक्सुअल ऑफेंसेस अगेंस्ट वुमेन एंड चिल्ड्रन पे डेथ पेनल्टी लगा दी उसमें वो फिर लड़कियों को ही डांस से मार देते हैं ना इट्स नॉट प्रोटेक्टिंग द वुमेन इट इज ओनली लीडिंग टू मोर किलिंग ऑफ द वुमेन
यस मैम आफ्टर निर्भया मैम अगर देखें तो ट्रेंड मैम इंक्रीज हुआ है बल्कि मैम ना कि नीचे गिरना चाहिए था क्योंकि
बट मैम वन थिंग इज
in rape cases the conviction rate is 27%.
27.
So 75% are still going free. Yes, even after, and this is only about the reported cases. The cases which have been reported is not even counted.
Yes, ma'am. Like marital rapes, ma'am.
We refer to Nirbhaya, which is a stranger's rape. But yes, we have got this latest figures in Delhi are saying that it is only 1.some%, which is stranger. Every other case of rape is by a person you know and you trust.
Yes, ma'am.
It's your own family, it's your family members, it's your relatives, it's your neighbors, it's your teachers, it's people you trust, friends of the family. Yes, so we don't think they are they are the threat. We think people on the street are the threat. So there are lots of misconceptions, and we do not critically examine the facts. We are led by emotion or by tradition. Historically, this is how it was.
Ma'am, the poor execution of the criminal is maybe due to the poor policing or our flexibility in the legal system. But fear must be removed in the society.
Many a times, no. It says certainly that's also true that poor investigation takes place. But poor investigation takes place in which cases? Now look at this fellow, the actor who died, committed suicide. Sushant. What is the case and where it has led? There's no relenting on the investigation. You are catching up everybody on the planet. So that's one kind of investigation. And in dowry cases, dowry death cases, we have seen they will not even pick up the lipstick. No, she has written something on the mirror with that lipstick. And the police did not think it was worthy of picking it up or taking a photograph of. So such shoddy investigation happens in some cases. And in some other cases, they will go to any extent to find out what all is happening. So that's certainly one. But the more important question is, why so? What are the circumstances, which are the kind of cases in which short investigation happens? There's a group where there can be always one SHO, one IO who's not doing the good job. But when you start looking at the patterns of investigation, then you find that there are a lot more other things which are playing a part. And it is not always the political pressure of somebody. It is in our own mind.
So, ma'am,
if you're a police officer, a woman comes and says, oh, my husband has beaten me up. What will be your advice to her?
घर के मामले में घर में सॉल्व कर लो
वही ना तो हम सोचते ही नहीं कि इसको कुछ मदद की जरूरत है हमें कुछ उसके हस्बैंड को बुला के पूछना चाहिए भाई क्या हो रहा है कल को पता बंद कर देंगे उसको कहते हैं अरे बदले तो अपने आप देखो ना कोई देखो पड़ोसी से बात कर लो अंकल से शादी किसी ने उसको बिचौलिया बुला लो सो वी ट्राई टू काउंसिल द वुमन एंड dowry death offense is only after she's dead and there are also lots of loopholes in the language itself. So once we accept, and that brings us back to actually Gyarsibai and Dhiraji again, domestic violence means primarily beating by husband to the women. Do you know what is the percentage of married women who are subjected to domestic violence?
It may be more than 90.
No, that's an overestimation. 1 in 3. 1 in 3 women have faced domestic violence. How many cases have women filed out of this 1/3 of total married women? We are all talking about backlash. No, we are not talking about misuse of the law. Have you found this 1/3 married women filing cases against all these husbands who have given them who has given them at least one slap? What did you think about Thappad? The movie Thappad. One slap, is it sufficient to ask for divorce?
No, ma'am.
Why not? Okay. Stop,
It's enough
stop,
that
stop,
Yes,
woman,
stop. Your junior gives you a thappad in the office. Is it worthy of terminating his services?
no, ma'am.
Of course.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course,
So
ma'am.
if one thappad in the office scenario is sufficient to at least give a demotion, to have all these caustic remarks against him, to spoil his annual report, why it is not worthy of any legal action in family law, in family sphere?
It will lead
The
to
woman can
cruelty.
be beaten up. No, it
Double
can be,
standards.
women can be beaten up. That's what, no, that we think, if we say violence among adults is not acceptable in the public sphere, in the office, in the classroom, if a boy gives you a thappad and your teacher does nothing, will you be happy?
Ma'am, on a moral ground, yes. But
No,
if
I'm
you
not
see,
saying moral ground. No, I'm not saying moral ground.
if you see the
You have
practical,
been,
then it
we
become a
had, I think in
chaos in society.
another class, the student asked me that if a girl slaps a boy and humiliates him in the class, whether it is enough to move the woman from that class. Or rusticate her.
Yes.
We have
Yes,
to
ma'am.
look the
Then why
circumstances.
the
Yes,
husband
ma'am.
not?
Why?
So why
has
should the
that
husband
thing
be not?
happened?
Why
It
should the
depends
husband be
upon
not
the
separated?
ma'am. If the things are being taking place from a long period of time, then the thing should be taken in a
No,
long.
we're talking about only one instance. We're talking about only one instance. And
Just
certainly that instance would have a background. And in the film Thappad, she does say that I've been ignoring lots of things. This was only a culmination, even though it is just one thappad, but it is a culmination of long-term destroying of my personality. That's what she says, no? That it may be just one thappad, but even that one thappad he can't give.
ma'am, but it's still
Yes,
a
ma'am,
single
because
act
it
is
would
not a valid
lead.
reason for any kind of such divorce or something. Just a single act cannot lead to a certain thing.
Naman, what did you say?
Ma'am, I was saying that the single act of just giving a single thappad is not sufficient for a reason for anything to opt for divorce or something.
But that does
So are you
encourage
saying,
the husband to do
that
it
if your
again.
class fellow, no, are you saying that your class fellow gave you a thappad, whether rightly or wrongly, should lead to no action?
No, ma'am, there should be an action, but
What
it's
action? What action? No, what action would you recommend?
a complaint to the faculty or something, or
So what should the faculty do? What should the faculty do? What you expect the faculty to do? एक ही थप्पड़ था कोई बात नहीं हो जाता है. Should the faculty say that?
no, ma'am.
Then why would you say that in the when the husband hits her?
Punishment should be
That's
given,
it.
but a single support
What
cannot
punishment? I'm asking you. What punishment?
suspension for
What
1 day,
punishment?
3 days, suspension for few days, kind of suspension.
So he comes back after 3 days. Are you feeling very happy about it?
No.
He comes back after 3 days. But then
And he does not even
I
realize his
continue, na?
mistake. He
हाँ,
just does it out of the sake of doing it. Because he was missing this female
तो
figure
ठीक है
in his
चलो 3
life.
दिन और नहीं बोलेगा चलो ठीक है अब तो 3 दिन की मिलती है ना पनिशमेंट एक और फिर निकाल
Ma'am,
देना 3 दिन का कोई बात नहीं.
मैम so on a lighter side, इंडिया में फिर 60-70% मैरिज आज की डेट में डिवोर्स ही हो जाएगा if one
तो
thapad
ठीक
is
है
enough
हो
cause.
जाए एग्रीड हो जाएगा बिल्कुल हो जाएगा पर उसके लिए जिम्मेवार कौन है? औरतें जो आदमी से उस बात की आवाज उठाएंगी कि आदमी जो मारना छोड़ेंगे नहीं?
It doesn't mean a thappad is a justification, but that's a
No,
too
I'm saying
small reason for that.
assuming that it will lead to 60% married couple getting divorced. My question is, who will be held responsible for those divorces?
Men, society.
The violators.
Husband or the violator.
So फिर what should stop? The divorce should stop or the थप्पड़ should stop?
Thappar should stop.
Thapad should stop.
हाँ तो फिर वो तो फोकस नहीं करे ना भाई डाइवोर्स क्यों लेगी अरे क्यों थप्पड़ क्यों मारेगा भाई वो why would he
उनको रख के थप्पड़
why
मारना.
why would he if he doesn't want a divorce don't give a थप्पड़. That should be our lesson ना. नहीं एक थप्पड़ में क्यों डाइवोर्स क्यों मांग रही है अरे भैया तुम थप्पड़ मारा क्यों था Did you not know she will ask for divorce? ऐसे हम क्या कहने नहीं कुछ नहीं कहेगी वो तो डाइवोर्स थोड़ी हो जाएगा एक थप्पड़ पे तो ना मार दो कोई बात नहीं कैसे क्यों मार दो That's the question to ask ना. We have to learn to ask the right questions. But traditionally this is happening. So if one woman says no, one thappad is not enough, we are very shocked. But if you start analyzing it, what is wrong in a woman asking a divorce from a husband? And in this film, especially, in this film, the husband never apologizes even for that one thappad. Never. He's now building up a case of more and more and more, putting the blame on her or what happened, putting the blame on the circumstances he was in. He should have just plain and simple apologized. Doesn't do that. Doesn't do even that. Because we believe in what we call as in the criminal law, we have a concept called restorative justice, where we say that the victims and offenders should be given an opportunity to meet each other in a docile, in a peaceful manner. And if the accused person is really feeling sorrow about what he did, he's very ready to apologize, he's ready to make amends, he must be given a chance. But the husbands think it is their right to have hit her, and there's nothing wrong about it. She's in the wrong if she's challenging my thappad. That needs to change. No? If you want a peaceful married life, you need to ensure that there's not even one thappad in your relationship. And if she asks for a divorce in that one, for that one, you are the one who are to blame. Because hitting adults, even today we're saying hitting children is not permissible. Children can file a case against the parents if they hit her. The physical violence is completely prohibited, even for children. And we are saying it's okay to hit another adult person. Not acceptable. I think there were lots of thoughts for you to think about. And we can wind up today's class. We now move on to the next area of our discussion, which is exceptions, I think. Yeah, so we have exception for tomorrow. 300 secondly, and exceptions to 300. So we have actually spent quite a bit of time on section 300 secondly. We'll move on to exception from tomorrow. My suggestion is read the whole of exception 1 before the class. Exception 1 with all their provisos and illustrations. So give a bare reading and see how much of you comprehend, and then we'll continue our discussion tomorrow. Mark your attendance.
Can you please repeat the word?
Exception 1 to section 300. And there are exceptions, and then there are further exceptions. 300. There are 5 exceptions. Remember, we started discussion on section 300 saying except the section started with except in the cases in hereinafter accepted. So 5 are the scenarios which are accepted from being considered as murder. First of them is exception 1, when culpable homicide is not murder, when due to sudden and great provocation he killed. Then there are exceptions to the exceptions, 3 of them, and there are illustrations. So I want you all to read all these all these illustrations, and I think I want to very quickly read exception 2, 3, 4, and 5 also. So you got an overall understanding, but we are going to focus on exception 1 with reading of Nanavati also. So day after tomorrow we are looking at Nanavati. Tomorrow we are looking at the bare reading of the exceptions. Okay? Everybody has marked your attendance?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.